This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hello and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Tyler. My guest today is Maribel Quezada Smith. Maribel is a producer, a marketer, a writer, and a host of Diferente podcast. Hi, Maribel, and welcome.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I forgot the most important thing, a new mom.
Yeah, that is a very important thing. Yes, I'm a new mom. My son is 6 months old.
Yes. How is everything going? How are you figuring it out?
I'm figuring it out as we go. My husband and I are just learning. We are students of life and we've been doing pretty well so far, but it's parenthood. I don't know if you're a parent, but
I am.
it's it's always a challenge.
It is. It is. But my biggest lesson I learned as a parent was to just trust my guts. Just don't care about it. Don't read books and listen to what other people say. Just follow
Yeah.
your gut, follow your baby and follow your
Yes.
guts. And I think that's and that taught me that lesson for life as well. I think since I had Kai and learned that with him, I've generally trusted my guts more.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good piece of advice. And my cousin gave me that advice too before I had my son. She said the same thing. Look, you can learn and listen and read and talk to people all you want, but at the end of the day, you have to decide what's best for you and your child.
Yeah. Tell me about your other baby. Tell me about Diferente.
Oh, well, yeah. So Diferente is a podcast that explores the complexities and adventures of living a life between two or more cultures. So it's basically about my experience living in the USA as an immigrant. I'm originally from Mexico. And I've always kind of felt like I was diferente. And I never really felt like that was a good thing. I always thought it was a bad thing to be different. And I always thought that I needed to change myself to be able to be accepted and to be able to be happy. And so it took me a long time to learn that that wasn't the case, that in order for me to be happy, I actually just needed to learn to accept myself, not change myself. And that led me to this kind of movement of trying to share that knowledge with other people who live a life similar to mine, where they're straddling two or more cultures. In the US, we have a lot of immigrants. So, not just immigrants, I should say, like just people who, in general, like maybe they marry into a different culture or a different ethnicity, and they constantly have to juggle those differences, but they have to celebrate them as well. So there are a lot of people like myself who have that journey in life, and I wanted to celebrate that and explore, because it can be a little bit complex, but it's also beautiful.
It's very complex, and I love you for doing it because I know I know how it feels. I'm originally from Croatia, and at 17, when the war broke out, I moved to Austria. So I was a foreigner in Austria, and then with time, as you know, you acquire a lot from your new country, so you're kind of a foreigner in your old country as well.
Yes.
And for
Yes.
past 10 years, I've been living in the United States, and here I am, different again.
Yeah. You're actually my key demographic. There you go. You can totally relate.
It was such a big lesson to learn to, as you say, to accept that and to celebrate that as something positive, to embrace your difference as something that's positive and instead of negative.
Yeah, exactly. I think you
Yeah,
have to understand that you don't have to shed your culture.
exactly. Yeah.
You can actually do both. You can embrace the new culture and continue on with your culture and celebrate both. It can be tricky at times, but that's kind of what we explore on my podcast. It is bilingual.
Mhm.
So we do have some Spanish episodes and I throw in Spanish here and there, but I think for the most part, people can really relate, even if they don't speak Spanish. It can be a nice, what do you say? Like, see, this is what happens to me. I forget the word in
Oh,
English.
I know.
But you know what like it can be a nice way of relating to
Yes.
other people who are going through the same experiences.
Yeah. What I'm learning through Thank You Mama is, and through my guests being so international, is exactly that. that we are actually so close to each other, no matter where we live and which circumstances we come from. These basic human experiences really connect us, and
Yeah,
I'm learning,
absolutely.
and I hope my listeners are learning through listening to these interviews that there's more that unites us than divides us, actually, and that's beautiful.
That's the goal, right?
Yes. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your work or yourself before?
Sure. So, Diferente is my passion project. That's my love, my side love, I guess. My love affair. I'm a producer, so I produce other podcasts and I also produce video content as well. So I spend a lot of time creating in general. And that's one of the most exciting things of my life recently, I would say. I have become more in tune with what my audience needs,
Mhm,
and I've begun to develop different offerings for the types of clients that I engage with on a regular basis. My experience is very much focused on television production. That's where I come from. The majority of my career has been in that arena in
mhm,
documentary. And I have come to realize that there are a lot of people who own small businesses, or maybe they have startup brands that they need to develop better content for. So I created my company to start consulting and coaching people who are trying to level up their content.
mhm.
And that's kind of where things are going now for myself in that direction. So, yeah, I'm excited. Things are moving forward quickly. I'm actually a lot busier than I thought I would be.
How do you balance it with the baby?
How do I balance
Mhm.
it? Well, I don't balance it perfectly, I will tell you that, but I do have some help, and that's made a lot of difference. And I
Great.
also have a partner who's very much a teammate. So my husband really pitches in
Mhm,
and we help each other because he's
mhm,
also very busy as well. So we just balance each other out as best as we can, and we make mistakes. We don't do it perfectly, but we're chugging along.
mhm. I heard in your podcast that we've heard this now, originally from Mexico, and that you moved to Ohio when you were 12.
Yeah, I moved to Ohio when I was 12. I always say 12 and a half. I don't know why I think the half is so important. I think it has to do with the fact that I feel like the more time I spent in Mexico, the more it validates that I'm Mexican. Sometimes that's how I feel. Like I have to fight for my right to call myself Mexican because
Mhm.
now I have spent the majority of my life in the United States.
Wasn't it strange when you reached a point where you've been longer in a foreign country or the
Yes.
other country? For me, it was like, oh my God, this is strange. I moved to Austria when I
Yes.
was 17, and then when I turned 34, I was like, uh-oh. Now I spend more time in Austria than I have in Croatia.
Yeah, yes, I had that moment of a little bit of sadness, and
Yeah. Mhm,
I think that's what a lot of people experience. Like I said, that's what led me to create Diferente. I just feel like I'm not alone out here feeling like you're not enough sometimes. Like I'm
mhm.
not Mexican enough or I'm not American enough. So, yes, we've all been through that thought process. I can totally relate.
Do you still live in Ohio?
No, I live in Phoenix, Arizona now.
Oh. Let's talk about Mama Lulu. Did I pronounce it right? You told me about the accent.
Yes,
Okay.
Lulu. It's important.
Yeah. Tell me about her.
Well, my mom was born in Mexico City, actually, but she grew up in Aguascalientes, Mexico. It's a smaller city. I shouldn't call it a small city. It's a decent sized city in central Mexico.
What is the different size city for Mexico?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't have the answer right now when it comes to population numbers. I would have to look that up.
Because coming from countries, Croatia has 4 million people, and Austria has 8 million people. It's very different when people consider a big city or a big country.
Oh, yeah. I'm about to Google it because I want to know. Actually, now I'm curious of the population census in 2010. It looks like 723,000 people.
Oh wow! You see, that would be a big city
Yeah.
in
Oh, okay.
Croatia.
Here in the United States, I think that would classify like as a maybe a top 20 size city,
Mhm.
something like that. I don't know. I might be off on that as well. But so it's a decent sized city, and she grew up with seven brothers and sisters, and she was always kind of different. I think she always kind of felt like she wanted different things from what her sisters and her brothers wanted. She wanted to go to college, but my grandfather wouldn't let her go away. There was no university in the city
Mm-hmm.
where she lived back then, and
Mm-hmm.
she had to go to Guadalajara, and my grandfather wouldn't let her because they were just super protective, old school
Mm-hmm.
parents. And so when she married my dad was like, "Oh, don't worry, you can go to college when we're married. We'll be in Mexico City. There's so many more options."
How old was she?
So she was, I think they were, well, my dad's, I think, 7 years older than she is. So she was 21, I think,
Mm-hmm.
when she married him. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, young.
Yeah,
And
yes.
and they moved to Mexico City, and she did start college there. But then she had my brother shortly after, and then, my sister, then
Mm,
myself. So her college got interrupted a lot. It actually
mm.
took my mom longer to graduate college than it did any of us. So she graduated after I did. So it took her like 30 years
Wow,
basically
but she did,
to
yeah.
finish her degree. But she finished it. And by the time she finished it, she didn't even need it anymore. She was already a successful entrepreneur, a successful business owner running a multi-million dollar company.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
she was already, she had everything that she needed. She had her home, there was, we were all graduated college, like we were all done with that part of life. We didn't need her to support us financially anymore,
Mhm.
but she wanted to do it for herself. That was a challenge that she always thought that she was going to complete, and she did it. It was
I
just
love it.
she's like, I got to have that paper.
What did she study? I mean, what did she graduate?
So she majored in accounting. I think she
Okay,
started in psychology and nutrition back in
okay,
Mexico City, but
okay.
she ended up finishing in accounting.
So what happened? How did she create this business? Tell me about that. I guess that was in the States when she moved to the
It was,
States?
yeah, it was in the United States. And she came from running a business in Mexico as well with her
Mhm,
brothers.
mhm,
And it was totally different to what her business is here, but she already had a lot of business expertise. She had helped my dad with his business too at the beginning, and
mhm.
then ran another business, and then in the United States, it was kind of like an opportunity where she got to learn about the home healthcare industry, and then she ended up branching off on her own.
So is that what her business did? Home healthcare?
Yeah, providing healthcare services in the home of patients.
Okay, okay. Did she speak English when she moved to the States?
Yes. So she actually, the one thing that my grandfather did let her do when she was younger was go away to study in LA. So she studied,
Mm.
I think it was a few months
Mhm,
in LA. She stayed at a convent.
mhm.
I just think that's so funny because that's like the only way that she would be allowed to leave her home.
The place you don't wanna be in when you're in LA.
Absolutely. Yes, and it is still there as far as I know, and I can
Mhm,
tell you that because I stayed there in 2004. Now I probably have to Google it and see if they're even
mhm,
still around,
mhm,
but in 2004 I stayed there because I had an internship in LA when I was in college.
mhm,
And
mhm.
my parents were like, "Well, where are you going to stay? It's so expensive out there." And I only had like a couple friends. They were like, "Oh, you should stay where I stayed."
How was that? How was that
Oh,
experience?
that's a very different experience for me. Let me just tell you that I stayed there for like 2 weeks, and then my friend was like, Why don't you come stay with us?" So, yeah, it was different. But anyway, so she went there and studied English for a few months, and that helped her a lot. Obviously, when we first moved to the States, she didn't have the perfect pronunciation for everything, and she still had to work at it. Actually, her and my dad took, what do they call? Are they called ESL? Yeah, they're called ESL classes for adults.
Mhm, English is a second
So they would
language.
do the night, yeah, they would go to school at like 7 p.m. from like 7
Mhm,
to 8 on
mhm,
Thursdays or something like that.
mhm,
And they would study English and practice it. And
mhm,
she got better. And honestly, I mean, she was able to keep honing her skills as she went
mhm.
along.
And what is she doing now? Is she still running her company?
Yeah, she is.
Mhm.
She keeps threatening that she's going to retire, but it's we'll see.
How old is she?
Is that should I say that? I don't know.
Then don't. But is she? Would
I'm
you
just
agree with
kidding.
her retiring now, or are you like, no?
Um, I don't think my mom is ever going to retire. I think that she said she's going to retire, but what she means is she's maybe going to stop working as much. She's just not a person that wants to be sitting around.
Mm-hmm.
So, I believe that she's gonna be doing something work related for the rest of her life, as long as she can move her hands and still think straight. Yeah, like her skills are really good. Like a lot of people, they if they don't stay up to date with work or with skill sets, they might have a really hard time learning new things. And
Mm-hmm.
I find that she learns new things pretty quickly
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to technology. I'm talking about, like, this sounds really weird, but when it comes to doing things on the computer that are more technologically advanced, or just things that are changing constantly, I
Mm-hmm.
find that she does a really good job with that. Compared to maybe a lot of people in her age group that maybe didn't do that before. And so if they had to learn it now, it would be very, very hard for them. She once told me that if she retired, then she would go to college and take the free courses, because I think you can take free courses at your
Mm-hmm.
local college if you're by a certain age. And she would take like coding courses. So, I'm all for it though. I'm all
Yeah,
for it.
and then she's gonna start her own coding company or something.
Yeah, I just laugh. I just laugh because, like, she just doesn't really wanna stop working. She says she does, but I think she just, maybe she just wants to relax a little bit more. I know she does. She wants to travel more and relax more, stress less. So, that's really what she means.
What have you learned from her? What would be the most important things you feel you've learned from her?
Well, I have to say that I've learned a lot of things. Some of the most important things that I learned from her are, for example, she was very much against credit cards when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want me to have a credit card like my other friends did when we went away to college,
Mm-hmm.
because she knew that I wasn't responsible enough to manage a credit card. So she would always talk to me about how it was really important to be responsible with that kind of stuff. And when I did get a credit card, she, because she still paid for my college,
Mm-hmm.
and basically I still had to live by her rules in a certain way, even though I was an
Mm-hmm.
adult, she made me sign a contract that said that if I didn't pay my credit card bill completely every month, I would have to then give back my computer. She had bought me like a nice brand new Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, come on." I just thought it was, like, so dramatic, but honestly, it was probably one of the best things she could have done for me, because it definitely taught me the importance of balancing debt. Um, I think that I was probably one of the few people in college who understood that, who actually paid off her credit card bill every month completely, like, no balance carrying over.
Mm-hmm. I love that. When I ask women in these interviews, I always ask what were things you wish your mom taught you. And very often my guests say finances and exactly that, dealing with my money. And I love it that this is the first thing you said she did teach you.
Yeah, that's just one of those things that I carry with me through life, and I was always, like, the most I would probably say that I was the least responsible one of my siblings when it come to financials.
Mm-hmm.
I just loved shopping, and it was hard for me. It was a lesson that took time for me to learn, but I will say that it also helped that when I was, like, 14, she gave everybody jobs at the house. Like everybody who lived at home, which was my sister, my brother, and I, we all had to do something, some kind of responsibility, like a chore.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my main responsibilities was running the checkbook. Like I had to balance our checkbook, our family expenses. So I had to write the bills. I had to write the checks to pay the bills, because back then you still had to write checks,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I had to run the ledger on the checkbook to make sure that we had enough money to pay the bills.
I love that. It's serious jobs. It's not like I
Yeah.
was taking trash out.
Yeah, I mean, like, I just thought that was really cool. Like, I was doing things like that when I was young that most of my friends didn't have any clue. I mean, some of my friends went to college not even knowing how to do their laundry, and I could run and balance a checkbook. So, I mean, I'm sorry, I am bragging, but I think that's something worth bragging about.
It is definitely. It's funny how I've learned it from my mom through the negative lessons. Like my mom was an artist, and there was never enough money. Like there was always a lack of money, and she was always in debt. And this is why I have a very tough time being in debt. And it took me a very long time. I think first when I moved to States to understand what a credit card actually is for, because I always, like you, I always just paid off my credit card at the end of the month.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, why do I have a credit card? I could just use cash or something.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Another thing that I learned from her was that she used to tell me that happiness is not in the future. It's
Hmm.
here now. Because I used to have a big problem with always looking forward to something. Like I would always be like, oh, when I do this, then I'll be happy. Oh, when I go there, then I'll be okay. And there were a few times where she was like, Maribel, you really need to make sure that you understand that if you're always looking for something else to make you happy in the future, you're just never going to be happy. So remember that you can be happy now. Like you don't have to always be looking forward to something
Hmm.
else that's going to bring you happiness.
Hmm.
So I thought that was a good lesson. I still struggle with that a little bit because sometimes when I'm stressed, I'm like, "Oh, well when I get all this done, then I can relax."
Hmm.
Instead of, balancing out and taking some breaks here and there to relax, sometimes I just like want to plow through and work all the way and finish everything before I can actually feel okay. And those are words that I have to remember.
Oh, that's such a big one. So important.
Yeah. Even though I would say that like it's hard to put that into practice, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's so easy to say that, but I don't necessarily I feel that's one thing I kind of envy about my mom. Like she's very happy. As far as like she's just someone who lives happily. She's
Mm.
had really rough times. I will say that. Like she didn't always have it easy, especially as a child. We had a very tough we went through some difficult times financially as well.
Mhm.
And we've had our ups, we've had our downs, but in the grand scheme of things, I find her to be like pretty good at finding a way to be happy even when things are
Mhm.
difficult.
But Maribel, do you think that's maybe exactly because of that? Because many people I know who experienced very tough times know how to appreciate normalcy. Like know how to be
Yeah.
happy right now when things are normal. They don't have to be brilliant,
Yes.
but just like, hey, it's okay. It's great.
Yes, yes. I think that's why she knows how to appreciate normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
Hmm.
Some of us don't know that as well, and yeah, that's true.
That's a beautiful lesson. Anything else?
So she also another thing that I carry with me and I probably will carry for life is she taught me how to fold my underwear. Um, she which people make fun of me about
Yeah.
this. Like apparently some people just throw their underwear in a drawer and
Okay.
they never think about it twice. But one day she walked into my room. I was a teenager and she walked into my room and she was like, Maribel, why don't you fold your underwear? Like your drawer would be so much more organized and it would be easier for you to put your clothes away. You wouldn't be dreading it as much to clean up if
Hmm.
things were organized.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, I didn't know I had to fold my underwear. I guess I never thought about it. So she like taught me that, if you fold your underwear, then they go in the drawer more easily and then you can look at everything you have easily and it's I don't know, it's just faster to organize that way. And people really think that I'm weird for that, but I love that. Like I love that she taught me how to fold my underwear and I still do it. And I taught my husband how to do it too.
It's so funny because I fold my underwear and I have no idea who taught me that, but I just take it so much for granted that my underwear is folded. I never thought about it. I wouldn't even know how to store my underwear in a different way. What do you
Yeah.
what do you do if you don't fold it? You just throw it in like a big
Apparently, you just
pile?
throw it in. I don't know. I don't know how I lived before. And you know what else she taught me how to fold? She folds all of her trash bags or all of her like back in the day before we used reusable bags to go to the store. She would fold all of the grocery bags, the plastic
Wow.
ones,
Uh-huh.
and roll them up and put them away that way so that they were more organized instead of just like throwing them somewhere in a bag. So I fold my grocery bags. Like whenever we use plastic,
Mm-hmm.
which is not as often, but whenever we do, I fold them. I roll them up and I put them away, and they're all organized underneath the sink. And my husband thought that was the weirdest thing, but now he does it. And everybody that comes over, when they see that, they're like, "What was happening? Why are you folding your bags?"
I think Mama Lulu should have a YouTube channel in which she teaches people to fold their underwear and their trash bags. I think that would be awesome. I would watch that.
I know. I think that she's kind of like the Marie Kondo of Mexican people.
Yes. But do you think that you did you through that did you generally learn to be organized?
Yes. I
Okay.
mean, she definitely was someone who was like, everything has a place. And if everything has a place, then you can put things away more easily. Because I used to detest having to pick up my toys or pick
Mm-hmm.
up my clothes or, just put things away
Yeah.
because I always kind of felt overwhelmed by the
Mm-hmm.
process.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly she kind of reminded me like, if you keep things organized, like if you have a place for everything, then when you're putting them away, you know exactly where they go,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes it easier to put things away and to find them later.
Mm-hmm.
So that has really helped me in life as well. I'm not perfect though. I mean, like my house is not always like tidy, especially with a
Yeah.
child, but
Oh
we
no.
do, which I think we do a pretty good job.
Wait till he starts walking.
No, I know, and yeah, it's already a mess, and he doesn't even walk yet. I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Maribel, let's talk about things you wished she taught you. Was there anything that she was not able to teach you where you're like, oh, this would be great?
Yeah. I think one thing that I kind of wish I would have learned at an earlier age, and I don't think that it's not her fault because she comes from a society and a family and just in general a life that has taught her the same thing that it's taught me, which is kind of that your body is very important and that being thin is pretty, or being thin is better.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come from that kind of life, you were raised to think that way, where you were raised to always criticize yourself if you're fat or if you gain weight, then you pass that on to your children. And that's definitely something that was passed on to me. It was the idea that I couldn't necessarily gain weight because,
Mm-hmm.
it just wasn't, you just shouldn't gain weight. Like
Mm-hmm.
like if you gain weight, you should always make sure that you lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
You should always make sure that you're staying thin, and thin is beauty in a way. This is the way that I
Mm-hmm.
was raised, and that has severely affected my self-esteem at times because I don't
Mm-hmm.
always have that luxury. Even though I am a small person, I'm,
Mm-hmm.
I don't I have to say I've had the privilege of not having to deal with that for the majority of my life. I've been fairly small.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I have gained weight, even if it's not significant, it has made me feel less than. And obviously having a baby, well, that's gonna put you
Mm-hmm.
down the spiral in that
Yeah.
way. So that's been hard for me sometimes to remember, like, it's okay, it's everything's a process and you should love your body regardless. So that's one thing that I wish I had learned from my parents, not just my mom. And it's just a lesson that I keep working on. It's something that I continue to work on and learn about. I learn about, I have learned a lot about body shaming. I've learned a lot about intuitive eating
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of self-love. It's not
Mm-hmm.
easy, but it's been an interesting journey to come to terms with the fact that I have been shameful to people in the past. Like I've cast shame onto other people for their body size.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really understood why that was a bad thing. This is going to sound
Mm-hmm.
terrible, but it's the truth. I never understood why that was a bad thing until I
Mm-hmm.
started talking to more people who were dealing with that and understanding their perspective, and then learning about it, reading about it, doing my own research, talking to
Mm-hmm.
professionals. It has really been helpful in the end, not just for the way that I treat people and the way that I look at people, but also the way that I treat myself.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a journey. I still, struggle with it. And I think I'm going to struggle
Mhm.
with it for the rest of my life. It's just going to be that thing that I have to continue to remind myself that it's okay not to be, perfect all the time.
But the question is also what's perfect.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, like, when I say perfect, I don't mean, like, not to be I don't mean perfect as being thin. When I say perfect, I mean, like, being perfect as in always accepting myself. Like,
Hmm.
to me now, if I was a perfect being, I would always accept myself regardless of my size.
Hmm.
That's not
Hmm.
always the case, and I think that's okay because I'm just gonna have to struggle with this for the rest of my life because it's been ingrained for 30
Hmm.
years.
But it's beautiful you're aware of it and we're talking about it, and you'll I guess you'll raise your children differently.
I'm trying. But I will tell you that my son is a little chubby. I mean, he's a baby,
Hmm.
but he's chubby, like, he's heavy, and the doctor told me that he was chubbier than his average age group.
Hmm.
It made me
Hmm.
feel really bad. It made me feel like I
Oh.
had done something
Uh-huh.
wrong, and he's a baby.
Mm.
I've done nothing wrong. I've breastfed him the whole time, and
Mhm.
that's it. Like, what how are
Mhm.
you can't do anything about that. He's
Yeah.
you're breastfeeding, and then you're not even giving him any solids yet, and you're already beating yourself up. That's it's just crazy. It just reminded me of how ingrained it is in me that body image or a certain body structure is important.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it just made me feel really bad when the doctor told me that. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's gonna be a constant struggle of learning how to balance that knowledge.
Maribel, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great. It's been really interesting chatting with you.
Yeah, and thank you for these very original lessons. Let me recap. So I have how to properly use a credit card
Yeah.
and how to not get in debt. That happiness is not in the future, but it's here and now. How to fold your underwear. I love it so much. But I want to stretch that out to just how to be organized. I think it makes your life simpler and easier and better when you're organized in general. That's me coming from an artistic mom who like chaos. um, and then something you wish you've learned was how to be okay with your body and regardless of its size or looks.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, no, I think you got it. I learned a lot of things, but those are the main ones that stick out to me, and I think will always
Yeah.
stick out to me.
Thank you. Thank you for your original lessons.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being my guest.